Ollie, it's great to be able to talk with you today. So the first thing I want to know is, what was school like for you?
It was overall, I think that it was good. I went to a few different schools growing up, not for any other reason than my family moved a few times. I started primary school in Lower Hutt, and then moved down to Dunedin for 3 years, came back up, and went back to the same school. And then I went to 1 year at intermediate because I didn't get into Hibs initially, but then I did get into Hibs. So from year 8 to 13, I went to Hibs, and that was the longest stretch. Overall, I mean, I don't know. It's a big question. It had its ups and downs, but there are still people who I'm friends with, who I was friends with at school. A couple of my best friends came down to Dunedin, and I've kept being really good friends with them. I don't know. I think that Hibs was pretty good. I was definitely glad to be out of there, though.
So friendships are obviously really important. The friendships that you've made through school were really important. Yeah. So how do you think that happened through the school? Did the school support that development of friendships, or what happened? How did that happen? Because I'm hearing mixed voices on that.
I would say I wouldn't say that schools. It's not my opinion that schools are designed to support people trying to make. Oh, I guess they are in a way, but I'd never felt that. Hibs certainly. I'll talk about Hibs because it's the school that I spent the longest time at. I don't feel like it was designed to help people set up friendships. I felt like that's just something that happens spontaneously. You just have, we had 2 periods in the morning. We had interval, and then we had 2 more. I had to try to remember, and then we had lunch, and then 2 more, and then home. And so, in interval and lunchtime, what are you going to do? That's just natural that you're just going to hang out and get to know people. And of course, when I went to Hibs, it took me. Well, I got put in a class that I didn't really know anyone, and I made a few friends. One of whom actually came over last night, and we hung out. But it was after I moved classes the following year that I started making some really solid friendships. And then that also changed again after I started NCA in the classes. There's this streaming. All the classes were streamed at Hibs, and you didn't really make friends outside of your class very much. And so I was friends with the people in my class from year 9 to 10. I found a couple of good friends that I made, and then after that, when everyone started mingling around a bit more because we didn't have those streamed classes, it was just who's doing science, who's doing arts, who's doing whatever, and I had made a couple of different friends there as well. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of ranting a bit.
Cool.
I guess that's kind of the point.
That's really good because whatever you have to say is your experience, and it's neat to hear those experiences. So that's really cool, and I'm really glad that you were able to make friends in your classes, especially having come in missing that first year. Because when you've got a group of friends that are all starting school at the same time, it can be difficult to come in later.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is definitely worth mentioning is a couple of the people in year 9 when I moved classes, I had already knew a couple of people. I was already friends with a couple of people in that class. And those 2 people have been my closest friends, more or less. I've got like a couple other people who I'm quite close with, but like I knew them before I went to Hibs. So I guess that was a good segue. It kind of helped me make other friends as well. Yeah,
fantastic. Okie dokie. So how long have you been out of school now, Ollie?
Surprisingly long time, I think. I left in 2007 17, which is 4 years ago, I guess. Oh, yeah. Well,
So you had
obviously
3 years out of
3
school.
and a bit, because yeah. But this is my 4th year out of school. Yeah.
So looking back, having had the opportunity to be out of school for 3 years, 3 and a bit years, and looking back on that, how do you find, like, have you used the content? What's been useful in terms of what you were learning in school and what you're using now? What do you think of that content? You can say whatever you like. It doesn't matter.
I think that question is kind of bound up in what you think schools are for in the first place. And I remember when I was younger at school and people would say, oh, school doesn't prepare you for real life. You don't learn how to do taxes. You don't learn how to do this and that and the next thing. But I don't think that is the responsibility of us. Well, actually, I haven't really thought about this in that much depth, but just intuitively, I wouldn't say that it's the responsibility of the schooling system to teach people certain things about life, like that, or like how to cook. I don't actually cooking. Actually, I changed my mind about that. I take that back. I think cooking would be great if they had that, because I really like cooking. I would have loved to do that at school. I did do that at school a little bit, actually. We had a little cooking course club thing that I did, but I think that it taught me, in terms of the knowledge that I got from school, yeah, a lot of it probably won't ever use. I still don't think that was a waste of time, because I love learning. I'm quite an academic person. I think I've always really enjoyed even stuff like, I wish that I could do maths now. I really don't like that I don't do maths, because learning calculus, I loved it. I thought it was great. Studying literature, loved it. Having to actually sit down and do creative writing as part of school, I thought was fantastic, because I love writing. I'd like to write in my life. That's something I want to do. Some things I didn't really like as much. Drama. I was never really much of a drama kid, but I don't really have an opinion, good or bad, about it. It was just, I don't know, it's just something that you did, I guess. And I do think that one thing that is important to mention is my biology and chemistry teachers really helped stoke the fire that made me really passionate about science. And that's what I just completed my undergraduate in biochemistry, which I guess is kind of, well, it's not really halfway between biology and chemistry, but it's definitely got aspects of both. And yeah, Paul Falloon and Kent Lawton were the two teachers that I had that taught me chemistry and biology respectively, and they both were just good teachers, I think. And I wouldn't say friends, but I would say, actually, towards the end of year 13, I'd say I was actually kind of friends with them, which was nice. Yeah,
that is fantastic. And one of our speakers in this current summit as well is talking about the one of her teachers who absolutely and utterly inspired her in the way that you were talking there as well. So what was it about those two teachers that was able to make those two subjects come to life for you and really ignite that fire for you?
Well, Paul, I feel weird even now saying Paul. I feel like I should call him Mr. Falloon, but I went on a World Challenge trip when I was at school, And so me and him and a bunch of other students went to Tanzania for a month. And so I spent a lot of time with him there and got to know him kind of as a person. So that helped at a personal level, just knowing someone as a person rather than just a teacher. But also, I just really enjoyed chemistry. I did scholarship chemistry classes in year 13, and I'm just very interested. I think that I don't know, he's just a nice guy. And I know some of the people in the class really didn't like him, so it's hard to say. It's hard to say
So
exactly. It's a lot of things, definitely. But
yeah. What do you think was going on for those people that they didn't like him?
A lot of them didn't like chemistry. And I think that being interested in chemistry probably made teaching it much more enjoyable. Because I would hate to, although I love teaching people stuff, I would not like to teach somebody who didn't want to learn, because it's like a lose-lose. You've got a teacher who's trying to convey this information to the students, and they don't really want to do it because it's not fun for them. The students are thinking, what the hell am I here for? Because chemistry, I like chemistry. I think it's great. And, I still am studying a field of science related to, I'm doing an honors in biochemistry this year. It's like, that's pretty well related to it. But if the students that want to go and do, a trade, if they want to go and do that, or if they want to do, I don't know, want to go into business, or they want to do art or something, a lot of them, I don't know, I just don't think they really cared.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at what was happening in your school, which you're describing, it sounds like an amazing school in lots of different ways. And you've got you've got a really good group of friends. You've got teachers that are inspiring for you. What about some of those other students that are not wanting to go into an academic field? How well do you think your school responded to them, and what was happening for them?
It's hard for me to say. I'll try, obviously, anyway, but because all of my friends were very academic, and I was very academic at school, and I didn't really hang out with people that weren't that. I guess a couple of my friends weren't that academic, but like they were musical, and they did a lot of music. I think that we had this gateway program that I think some people did, and it helped them. I don't know. I'd say I think some things are probably not that useful, or weren't that useful for some students. For example, but at the same time, you didn't have to do subjects that weren't useful. Like if you weren't a sciencey kid, you could do design tech and build stuff. And I actually would have loved to do that. And I think that we had this teacher called Mr. Waterson, who I only ever had as a reliever one day, but he was a really cool guy. And I think that one of my friends who's in engineering, he was a real mentor for him. Don't get me wrong, there are lots of teachers at the school that I thought, God, he's just useless. But there were as well a lot that I thought were very inspiring. What it would have been like at the school not being that academic, because I didn't hang out with those people.
Your thoughts are really interesting. Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, okay. And it's also really good to know that other teacher was there and was able to inspire that engineering bent in people as well.
Yeah.
When you're thinking of the teachers that worked for people, it was when they had that mutual interest, if you like, the interest in the subject, and the teacher and the student were able to make a connection. Is that right?
Well, that is what I would say is one aspect that was with Paul, for example. With Mr. Lawton, there was that to a degree, but we kind of had different interests within biology. Something that I really liked about him was that the way he treated me and other senior students, he treated us just like people, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, I remember one time there was this kid called, I'm pretty sure it was Awa Te Randall. This guy, he's a lovely guy. He's quite sporty. I think he was really good at underwater hockey. Didn't like biology that much. And we were in class and he just fell asleep at the desk. He was really tired. And I'd never seen anyone fall asleep before, but he fell asleep in class. And Mr. Lawton said, look, I might have not been him actually, it might have been another boy. But anyway, Kent said, hey, look, if you are really tired and you want to sleep, that's cool. You just don't come to class. Like, I'm not bothered. Like, if you're really shattered, I'd rather you went and had a little rest and slept in the library or something. But don't come into my classroom and put your head down and go to sleep, because that's so disrespectful to me. And the guy was just like, okay, sorry. And then that was it. And I remember one time I skipped class. I was writing some essay or something and I just totally lost track of time. And I got to halfway through the next period and I was still writing. And I was like, oh, shoot. And so I went and saw him after and I said, oh, Mr. Lawton, I'm so sorry I didn't show up to class. I just lost track of time. He said, no worries.
So there you've got that real idea of, again, treating you as a person, but also respecting that you're managing your own time and you're managing your own life, if you like, which is a really good segue into studying beyond there or to working or to whatever. It's a segue into life, isn't it?
Yeah, we had some quite good conversations with him as well. Just like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting. There's another dimension, I think.
Yeah, and it's a really important dimension, because without that relationship, we can't teach.
Yeah, definitely.
If you think about some of those teachers that were not good, and I don't want any names at all here.
Of course.
What made those teachers not cool, not good?
I had a teacher who, they were quite young. This is something that I think is important, is that I preface this by saying I'd like to do teaching myself later in life, but I don't want to do it now. I want to do it after I've gone out and done some other jobs, and I like to do it later in life, because I think that a lot of teachers who are young and they go straight into teaching lack maturity a bit. And we had this one young teacher who I actually ended up leaving the classroom because, because I wasn't getting anything done, because all the students would come in and we were supposed to be reading Shakespeare and we're supposed to be going through this play, and we would just sit there and the teacher would talk to some of the students about what had been happening in rugby for like half the lesson. And I mean, they enjoyed that because they didn't care about the Shakespeare, you know, they didn't care about English. They thought it was a waste of time. But that's what I was there for. You know, I wasn't there to talk about who was on, who played, what the score was or whatever. They just talk about sports, like 20 minutes of like a 50-minute period. It just frustrated me.
I've been there, done that too, and I was thrown out of class for when I was at school for doing maths class, because I just got so frustrated with the teacher talking about all these other random things.
Yeah.
And then he got really cross with me because I was actually sitting there doing maths. And
yeah.
He was
trying to ironic, really.
Like that. Yeah. So So that's one of the things, and it's almost like because it sounds like she was trying to build relationships with people rather than to get them to like her almost.
Well, it was a guy, actually.
It was a guy, yeah.
But yeah, I think that it was kind of it was the kind of behavior that students do when they go into a class, where they kind of still try and drag the lunchtime atmosphere into the classroom. And it takes normally about 5 minutes for the teacher to get the class settled. But he was kind of in that mindset himself, so it just kind of dragged on. Yeah, I found that frustrating.
Yeah, I totally get it. So there's that thing about the young teachers and not being able to get on with the lesson, taking that time beforehand. Is there anything else in terms of teachers and what makes a good teacher or a not so good teacher that you wanted to share?
I would say this is not something that I can't remember experiencing, but picking favorites, which is definitely something that teachers do unfairly. Like, I was talking to my brother. My brother's going into year 12 this year, but last year he was in a science class and he said one of the teachers just didn't like him. And, you know, he would give examples where one kid is talking and gets totally ignored, and as soon as he would talk, he would get told off. And I think kids don't like that. It's not fair. And you don't come into a classroom to be treated unfairly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think fairness is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sometimes hard to be fair or to be seen to be fair when there's a whole discussion around treating people the same, and yet some people need more support than others in order to get the same outcomes. And I know some of the work that I'm doing with early childhood teachers, we're talking about this, where actually some children need more support in order to get the same outcomes than other children. And it might look like you're being unfair, but what we're looking for is the same outcomes from people, and that could be something to think about as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's tricky as well, because I guess to what extent do you want to, this is not something that I have really even thought about. A lot of these things I hadn't really thought about much before, but I mean, how much are you willing to push kids in the first place, and to what point are you just going to let them do their own thing? And if they don't like it, you just accept, oh, don't like it. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it?
It's hard.
It's really
it's
hard.
Your domain. You got to figure that out.
Yeah. It's been really interesting talking to a principal, and he was the principal at Hirotonga College there for 20 years. And he first of all rebuilt the school, and then he started spending the last sort of 9 years that he was there, actually stopping and talking to groups of students. And when they finally figured out that he really did want to know what they were talking about, then he was able to make some massive changes within the school, because he was able to adjust what was happening to what the students were wanting.
Yeah, approachability, I think, is definitely important. We had quite a stern principal who was then taken over by, I mean, he was I would say he was a good principal, but the principal that followed was definitely more approachable. And he's a great guy. He's still the principal currently. Yeah.
That approachability is really important in both teachers and in principals as well, isn't it, then?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much. One last question just to finish off. Is there anything else that you wish you'd learned at school? Apart from cooking.
I would have liked philosophy, I think something that I think was an utter, just complete waste of time. I'm going to refrain myself. Religious education. What a load of crock. It was such rubbish. I wish we hadn't had that. That put me off, to be honest. Something like philosophy, studying philosophy would be great. With regards to religious education, if we'd actually gotten an education about different world religions and about different things, and if we'd spent this amount of time studying them, rather than, I mean, we watched a documentary about how evolution wasn't real in year 8, about that. It's just, I get angry about that. it's just not fair to kids to try and show them stuff like that when they're very impressionable. I thought that was very irresponsible. Anyway, and doing more stuff. I mean, like design tech. I would have loved to do that. Art. I would have loved to do art. Music. I would have loved to, I mean, I just love it. I love learning. So more stuff, I think, is what I would say.
Well, I can see that your learning journey is going to continue on, and
It's never going to stop.
Stuff that you're going to be learning over time. And don't let that learning journey stop, because I mean, it's not stopping for me either. And you don't know where your journey is going to take you. You're going to make an awesome teacher when you choose to go that way. It's going to be just absolutely and utterly fantastic. And I really appreciate the time that you've spent talking with me today. So thanks very, very much.
No worries.